All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are working on the India Agricultural and Rural Land Use Fact Sheet. So the first thing we're going to want to do is to bring up our read document. The first question here is about religions. What religions are found in India, and then which one is the most practiced religion. So this is a two-part question. What I've been getting a lot of times when I ask about, I had, tell me about the religions in India or United States or wherever. I had a lot of people just give me one religion. Whatever religion was the most practiced religion, that's what they would put down. Christianity, Islam, whatever. But that's not what you're asked to do. So I changed the question around a little bit to more reflect what you're actually supposed to do. So in this question, you're going to tell me what religions, being multiple, plural, and then you're going to tell me which one is the most practiced. In order to do that, you just come down to the religion section in your read document. You have all these over here that tell you the most common religions. So you'll need to list these out and then tell me which religion is the most practiced religion. This question I also changed. Before it just said, tell me about, Indian culture, U.S. culture, whichever place we were looking at. But I just had people giving me kind of generic things, and that's not really what you were supposed to do. Like each of these places is very unique. Some of them are similar, like the UK and the US have a lot of similarities, but they also have their own unique points. So rather than asking for a generic, tell me about the culture, because I kind of, when I wrote the question, I really wanted to see kind of your input, your view on the culture. But unfortunately, I have a lot of people who are just rushing through to try to get their work done. So they're not really, concentrating on learning about what it is they're reading. They're just trying to answer the question. And so again, I was getting some very, very basic answers. Some things that, were so generic that they could fit almost anywhere. And that is not the purpose of this question. So this question, what makes Indian culture unique compared to the rest of the world? So you want to look at religion. You want to look at ethnic groups. And then there is a whole section on just culture. Right. So right here, it's a pretty big section. Like this question is probably the most comprehensive question that we have. It's probably the one that takes the most reading to really answer it correctly. So I want to know what makes Indian culture unique. Don't give me just generic answers, generic culture things, because I will mark it wrong. I want to know what you found that makes them unique. So you're going to actually have to read and look at it and think. And that's kind of, the purpose of these questions. The reason why I left them so generic and vague was to allow people, the ability to think on their own rather than looking for a specific answer. And the hope is that, I might get some new insights from people, things that even I wasn't looking for. But instead, what I got was just really generic stuff that could answer the question and they can move on. So I changed this question around. What does the population pyramid tell us about India's population? So this question was one, what can you tell me about, India's population, U.S. population, whatever. And again, I was getting, total population. They'd be like, oh, there's, 1.4 billion people. And that would be all I would get, just one piece of information. So I changed it. Specifically, I want to know what the population pyramid says. So like these numbers that they have here, they're important. All right. But anybody can read numbers off of a chart. Like you can just slap those numbers in here and not really understand what it is that they're talking about. Not really see, kind of the bigger picture. So instead now I'm going to have people come down here, look at the population pyramid, read this section, and then answer the question. So in order to answer this question, you can't just come here and, slap some numbers in here. You actually have to read and look and think. So this one you're going to find down at the population pyramid. What types of resources are found in India and how are they used? So you're going to come up to the resources section. which is higher up here. There we go. Resources. So usually what I end up with is just a list of resources, which isn't necessarily bad. But it's also very, very simple, very straightforward. So I also want to know, like, what are the resources used for? Like, if they are, pulling oil out of Saudi Arabia, like, what are they using the oil for? Are they using it themselves? Are they selling it? So like there are resources that are used by the people that harvest them, and then there's some resources that are just mostly sold. So it just depends, and I kind of want people to look at that and see if they can tell me more about what the resources are used for. All right, now here's the section because we're talking about agricultural and rural land use. So on these fact sheets, some of the stuff that you look for, or that that's different, is these last couple of questions. So this one is, what are three pros and what are three cons of agricultural land use? So in order to answer this question, you're going to have to go, like, you're probably going to need to look at the environmental stuff, because they may talk about some bad stuff that's happening because of the way the land is used, and then you're going to want to look at resources, because they may talk about growing certain crops and some of the stuff there, and then you're going to want to come down to, let's see here. Settlement patterns might have some stuff in here. I think this mostly deals with people moving, though. I don't think it really talks about that. But yeah, so in those couple of sections that I talked about, you're going to have, here we go. And then agriculture. So, those sections, the agricultural section, the resources section, and then the environmental issue section, those are going to give you your pros and cons of agricultural land use. Okay. So just, I gave you a number, three pros, three cons. Now, some of the pros are going to be things that are pretty common sense. Like one of the pros, obviously, for agricultural land use is a more consistent amount of food, right? Because before agricultural land use, you're talking about, hunter-gatherer societies where, they would go to different places during different times of the year, because over in this area during the summer, they had berries. Well, then in this area during the fall, they had, gourds, like whatever. And like people would move around to follow that pattern. And they'd do that every year. They'd come to this place, during the summer, this place during the fall, this place during the winter, because different crops grew in that area. But they weren't using agriculture. They were just harvesting whatever was growing wild. But the problem with that is that, some years were worse for certain crops than others. A lot of times they didn't have enough to feed everybody. So like having agriculture allows you to have a more consistent amount of food, and it allows you to grow, certain types of foods. To be more efficient in growing foods. Like if you just have wild pumpkins growing, well, the area where they're growing in may not be the best area for them. And you may be able to find a better area by growing them yourself. So, like I said, some cons aren't going to be spelled out for you, but some of them are pretty common sense, or some pros rather. And then the cons are kind of the same. There are some that are common sense. We know that you use, things like pesticides and fertilizer when we're growing food, because, we have to grow so much food to feed everybody. We've learned about how, different crops and stuff deplete soils, clearing out forests, pollution. Like these are all things that we've talked about all year, multiple times. So some of this stuff will be, stuff that you remember from earlier, but then some of it's going to be talked about in this document. So this is your focus for this unit: agricultural and rural land use. All right. So this is the introduction to that on this particular assignment. All right, guys. So as always, if you need help or if you need anything from me, feel free to reach out and I'll do what I can to help you. Have a great day.